Good morning to all of you. As I sat up here and the memories flooded back, I remembered that I sat right there in a Little Feat concert some 40 years ago. Right there, right there. But it's so wonderful to be here. President Wagner, the class of 2010, distinguished guests, my fellow bicentennial medalist awardees. It's truly an honor to be here. I have to pinch myself that I'm here receiving this medal, just like I pinch myself every day to remind myself, Mika, that I'm in the United States Senate. I have to tell you that on top of that, having the honor of being asked to address you this morning is just beyond measure. And I'm inclined to, as a member of the House previously and now the United States Senate, to want to yield time to each of these other wonderful awardees. There's an old saying that sticks and stones can break your bones, but words can do real damage. And if you think about these four wonderful people sitting here, starting with Mika, she's on live TV every day. Talk about a rhetorical high-wire act. Live TV is a fierce, fierce medium, and it's a test. Karen, she's called on every day to interpret words in the law that affect the lives of many, many people. Gary ensures us that we have full access to words and their wonder that they create, the humor that they lift in us, the inspiration that they provide. And he does it in a way that's beyond measure as well. And then my mentor, John Reynolds. I think some of you probably think this was an Outward Bound plot this year, tied with a Colorado connection with the judge here. But John Reynolds, he talks the talk, he writes the haiku, and he's lived such an active life as a Navy SEAL, as a mountaineer, and as a marathoner. It's been said in a successful man's life that the most surprised person in the world is his mother-in-law. I think a close second would be my college classmates. If they saw me, and some of them I know I've seen this weekend, are here. Now, some of my classmates think the term successful politician is an oxymoron, but we'll leave that for another discussion. I have a confession to make. I dream about Williamstown and Williams College periodically and what I would do if I had a second chance to be back here. And I'll speak to that a little bit more in my remarks. But I know if I were here at an earlier age, I would find Professor Rudolph and Professor Mumma and apologize to them for the way in which I behaved at times. I would also find President Sawyer, who knew my name for the wrong reasons. President Wagner, I don't want to give anybody any ideas, but I decided I could learn more in a week in New Orleans during Mardi Gras than I could in the conventional class schedule here during that particular. I'm here obviously to receive this esteemed medal, but I'm here more than that to deliver a thank you card to the college, to all those through literally centuries that have made this the institution that it is. I was asked yesterday, as the college searches for a new leader, what I would do in the way of adding to the curriculum, adding to the presence the college has. And I said, look, from my point of view, the college is perfect, just like my 19-year-old daughter is perfect. But I have one of the best jobs in the world as a United States Senator. And Williams taught me how to be a senator, even though I didn't know it at the time. And you might say, well, why? How? Well, on this campus, I had both the freedom and the structure to be curious. And on this campus, I found diverse people that challenged my assumptions about the world and the way the world operates. I have to make another confession. I was an Arizonan. There were only two of us here. There was a quota system to get Arizonans here. And you can imagine coming from the dry and beautiful deserts of Arizona to Williamstown, Massachusetts, having never visited the campus even when I had applied. I showed up here on the first day and off we went. Here I also discovered a love of mountains. And it led me to my first career as an outdoor educator, albeit an unconventional educational career, but one that was wonderful and stimulating, and took me to many, many places, both in the mind and on the face of our earth. And I, with your indulgence, want to talk not as a senator, but as a mountaineer for the remainder of my remarks. My son Jed is here, and I'm very proud of him. He came up from North Carolina yesterday. It only took him 12 hours, given the weather we had on the East Coast. And he like me at the age he's at, will eventually get a shave and a haircut. But I'm waiting for that to happen. But there's a great picture of me on the golf team, Bill, with hair halfway down my back, with those patent leather shoes that we wore back in the 60s. But we drove in here, Jed and I did a few years ago, and I said, look at these mountains as we came over the pass from New York. And he said, Dad, these aren't mountains, these are just hills. I said, you spend a winter here, you'll understand these are mountains. Would you all agree? So I entitled my remarks Attitudes and Altitude. And if you'll indulge me just for a few minutes, you all know what altitude is. An attitude has different definitions. And for me, I think about if I'm going to mix outdoor challenges running a river. You have three dynamics at play when you're running a river, whether in a kayak or a raft, or if you've somehow fallen out of the raft and you're trying to swim your way to safety. You have the current, you have the momentum, and you have the attitude. And the attitude of your boat is the way in which you're pointed. It's what you see. And my experience in life has been that when I gain altitude, metaphorically and literally, I also gain attitudes. And I want to just share a couple of personal stories with you to illustrate what I'm saying. In 1992, I traveled up to Alaska to attempt to climb Denali, the Great White One, Mount McKinley, the highest peak in our country. And my partner and I settled on a strategy to go fast and light. We took 7 days worth of food, only enough gear to go up and over the top of the mountain. Well, 10 days into that 7-day climb, we were in a bit of a pickle because we had no food left. It was 20 below. The winds were blowing 20 miles an hour. Our only way off the mountain was over the top of the mountain. And we dug deep. We had a break in the weather. We went up and over the top of the mountain. Soon we're home. But the attitude I learned there is when you're in all the way, you'll find a way. The second mountaineering story I want to share with you was a few years before that adventure in Alaska. I had an opportunity to attempt the turquoise goddess known as Cho-Yu. It's one of the highest mountains in the world. And we spent 3 months attempting to find a way to the summit of that marvelous, beautiful mountain on the Tibetan-Nepal border. And we didn't reach the summit. Well, that gave me an attitude. I was disappointed. I was frustrated. And I've realized that I always learn more when I fail. When I set a high goal, when I want to gain an altitude that maybe I can't reach, then I learn and I come back and achieve another goal. 3 years later, I climbed the third highest mountain in the world. And in the process, I made a lot of friends in Tibet, and now one of my causes in the United States Senate is to stand up for the people of Tibet and their right to autonomy and self-determination. A final story. In 1985, I traveled to northern Pakistan, which is dotted with some of the world's highest peaks. We attempted, again, another one of the world's very difficult mountains, Nanga Parbat. But I found something there that had nothing to do with mountain climbing. We lived in a Muslim community for those number of months, and I found that the people of that part of the world want the same things we want. They want to be respected. They want to pursue their dreams. They want to raise their families in peaceful situations. I had no idea at the time that I would be called upon now as a member of the Armed Services Committee to sit in judgment of and craft policies as we fight a counterinsurgency all over this world against the forces of chaos and destruction. So in sum, what I found here at Williams was an institution that both gave me the room and pushed me to climb in any way I defined that climb. And if I might turn to each of you, you each have to find your own climb. And they're waiting you. Although John was in Pakistan recently, and I am trying to be flowery in my presentation, and my approach to the Pakistani Prime Minister talked about America and Pakistan were climbing a mountain together, and that I had done so in the past with my Pakistani climbing partners. And he said, "Senator, that's great, but when you reach the top of the mountain, then you see a whole bunch of other mountains you have to climb on the horizon." I left it there for further discussion. But let me offer you, if I might, just a little bit of advice. Take it for what it's worth. I really do believe that a life that's lived best is a life that's focused on adventure. And that adventure can be found in all realms. Climbing really is nothing more than, somebody once said, "Greg, we're conquistadors of the useless." But it's a metaphor for the really risky endeavors. I talked with Elizabeth last night about finding a new liquid renewable fuel for our transportation sector. That's an adventure. Starting a family is really an adventure. Enlisting in the military or in Teach for America or the Peace Corps is an adventure. And adventures are risky. The outcomes are uncertain. But when you're in an adventurous undertaking, you feel your heart quicken, you feel that self-doubt rise, you feel a sense of excitement. That's when you're truly, truly alive. So I want to encourage you to find those adventures. You have the education, you have the worldview. It's what will make your lives rich and meaningful and rewarding. My request is that you have an attitude about being a participant in our democracy. Being a citizen in America isn't a spectator sport. I want to, in that spirit, talk about three figures. I just had a chance to meet with President Obama as we grapple with a health care reform in our system. And he's a remarkable man. He's the right leader for this time. His hair is beginning to turn significantly gray. I told him it's because he has two teenage daughters on the way, Mika. But his attitude is one of adventure. He says over and over again, who wouldn't want to be on the field right now? Who wouldn't want to be in this great set of debates we're having about the future of our country in the 21st century? And as he said Wednesday night, Americans don't fear the future, we shape the future. And with an adventurous attitude, I have no doubt that we will continue to do so. The second figure is someone who might surprise you. He's a very good friend of mine, serves the United States Senate. That's John McCain. I just traveled for 4 days with John McCain to two of our crown jewel national parks. John McCain has dedicated himself to a cause greater than his own self-interest. And although I didn't vote for him last fall, he's a friend of mine, he's a mentor, he's a role model. And by the way, if I can editorialize, he is clear that climate change is real and that we have to act, and look for him to lead in a bipartisan fashion as we grapple with that great policy challenge. And finally, to provide a little counter to my own advice, I was in Boston 2 weeks ago today for Senator Kennedy's funeral, and many powerful images still are flowing over me. One, we drove by the Holy Cross University High School facilities, and the entire football team in a driving rain was standing there in their uniforms with their helmets under their arms, showing respect to Senator Kennedy. Senator Kennedy's credo was, forget about the mountains, climb a lot of molehills. That's how you get things done. So in conclusion, don't just make that obligatory climb up Mount Greylock once a year. Climb it on a moonlit night. Climb it on a moonless night. Climb it on a cold, cold winter day. Climb it on an afternoon whim with all due respect to your professors in the class you might miss that day. Because I promise you, when you come back down from that altitude, you'll have the right set of attitudes. So Sean Colvin sings, "Climb on," and as we say here in this valley, climb far. Thank you.